Welcome to the Swine Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast, the latest swine nutrition research digested for you. I'm your host, 𝗬𝗽𝗀𝗃, and today we have with us Garrin Shipman. He's currently a PhD student at South Dakota State University. So Garrin, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes. Hi, Clayton. Thank you for having me on here today. Garrin Shipman. I am a PhD student at South Dakota State University at the halfway point, so hopefully almost done. So prior to my position here at SDSU, I did my undergraduate and master's at NC State. Originally from North Carolina. I, however, did not grow up around swine production. I grew up with horses, and it wasn't until my junior year of college when I got interested in pigs. So eventually led me to the position I am at now. So with that, both my master's and my PhD programs have been focusing on the sow nutrition, primarily focusing on gestating sow diets.
Awesome. So let's talk about some of the recent research you've done. I read about your study looking at the effect of this carbohydrate mixture fed with high fiber diets and growing pigs and sows. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that study?
For one component of my PhD here, we've looked at the use of carbohydrase enzymes for gestating sows. So a majority of the American swine gestating sow diets are based on nutrient values attained from grower pigs. However, we have seen that gestating sows actually have a higher capacity for nutrient and energy digestibility. So, and again, go back to the carbohydrate enzymes, they are being utilized based on inclusion levels from grower studies. From previous work by Hans Stein has seen that sows also have a higher capacity to digest crude fiber and NDF components, but we want to go a little bit more in depth and see how these enzymes work for sows. So for the first study, we did actually a comparison between gestating sows and grower pigs. For the sows, there's actually a 2x3 factorial arrangement. So sows are fed either a low fiber or high fiber diet, and with 3 different inclusion levels for the multiple carbohydrate enzymes. The fiber levels for this study were based off of a survey that we sent out to production nutritionists to get their feedback input on how they would determine their fiber levels for their gestating sow diets. And from there, we did the experimental diets. Sows were fed restricted, and then while the grower pigs were just fed the high fiber diet with the 3 varying enzyme inclusion levels. So go back more about these the different feeding regimens for the grower pig versus the gestating sows. The big difference primarily is the fact that when it comes to fiber, the sows have a larger fermentation capacity compared to the grower pigs, as well as sows being feed restricted, they would already have a slower rate of passage. So from this study, we saw that compared that the sows, the enzymes did increase nutrient digestibility on a parent total tract level, as well as that for the grower pigs. However, when we looked at the non-starch polysaccharide components, so the hemicellulose components of the NDF, we saw that the enzymes did increase NSP digestibility for the grower pigs. However, it did not have an effect for the gestating sows. So when we compare the gestating sow versus the grower pig, regardless of enzyme supplementation, we saw that the gestating sows already had a higher capability to digest dietary fiber components. So going back to perhaps these multi-carbohydrate enzymes might not be utilized well, since the sow herself already has a higher capability to digest the fiber components in general. So as a follow-up study, we did a ileal cannulation study with Gestating Sows, fed to semi-experimental diets to determine ileal digestibility. From a preliminary results, we have seen that enzyme supplementation did not have an effect on apparent ileal or standardized ileal digestibility of the amino acids. However, the main takeaway of this from that secondary study was that the fiber also significantly hindered the digestibility of the amino acids, both apparent and standardized. And some follow-up studies we'll be looking at, again, going back to the cannulation for Gestating sows and looking at different fibrous components such as insoluble versus soluble and different fiber components.
Gotcha. So, so you mentioned earlier that the nursery pigs, the carbohydrates mix had a lot larger effect on them than it did for the sows. Do you think that's just because the sows were kind of like already producing ample amounts of those carbohydrates since they're already kind of prepared to have the hindgut fermentation of those fiber sources, or what do you think that was?
So the sows or any monogastric animals lack the capability to produce these exogenous fiber-degrading enzymes. So these enzymes include galactase, pectinase, arabinase, xylanase, which gives dietary fiber what is well known for to be dietary fiber would be naturally non-digested by the animal. But again, looking at the fermentation capacity, the sows already have a larger, more exposed gut microbiome that would help in the fermentation compared to like grower pigs that have not been exposed as long. So their gut microbiome is minimal compared to that of the sow. So they have less fermentation.
Gotcha. And what was the fiber source that you used to increase the fiber content in both these diets for the grower pigs and for the sows?
For this study, to increase the dietary fiber sources were soybean hulls and DDGS. And it's very representative of a regional Gestating sow diet that would be fed here in the United States. But however, when we look at Western Canada and parts in Europe, they use different fiber sources. So wheat, oats, barley. And so that's going to be another follow-up study to this, is how, when we look at different fiber sources, what is the value of these enzymes?
Gotcha. So that was going to be my next question, is what you plan to do more research with this. So do you have that determined already in terms of which fiber sources you're looking at? Kind of the ones you had said earlier. The only one I can think of right now off the top of my head is like maybe beet pulp. But are those ones that you've already had determined, or are you trying to figure out which ones to test next?
We have not have a set design yet for that study of what dietary fiber sources will be used. But again, like beet pulp, wheat, barley, canola, any other major fiber ingredients are typically used, but might not be representative of American diets, or there has some potential. So it's like sugar beet pulp. There's talk about using that in sows, but still is still not being used at this moment.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing that study with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and to everyone else, thank you for listening to the Swine Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast. Please visit us at swinenutritionblackbelt.com, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you won't miss out on the next episode. See you next week. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we are constantly on the lookout for the latest updates in swine nutrition. And if you have a swine nutrition related research trial that you would be able to share on our podcast, please send an email to nutritionblackbelt@swineit.com, and we would love to talk about your research. See you later.